It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Back to the program, we have Mr. Felix Normand on the line. Felix, welcome back, sir. How are you doing this morning?
Doing good, doing good. How about you?
Doing well myself. I want to remind you guys out there listening that this portion of the broadcast is brought to you by the Patriots of Act 746. Now, what you want to do about the Patriots of Act 746 is you want to go to Facebook and you want to search for Patriots of Act 746 and you want to request to be a member if you're interested in what they're interested in, and that is constitutional carry in the state of Arkansas, your Second Amendment rights, and what you can and what you can't do in the state of Arkansas when it comes to carrying a firearm or, you know, a knife or a club for that matter, because it's Act 746 and it decriminalized the possession of a firearm here in the state of Arkansas. Let me put it to you this way. There is no law that says that you are allowed to sit on your front porch and drink iced tea. But there is no law that prevents you from doing that. That is the status of our gun laws here in Arkansas right now. Felix, real quick, just remind everybody how you got involved with the Patriots of Act 746.
Well, I got involved because, let's see, I was a member of some other gun groups, and I remember when they passed the law in 2013, and we used to discuss it among ourselves. I used to work at a local gun dealer here, and it was Wednesday night prior to Thanksgiving, and the last customer of the night I was waiting on. I was selling him a gun who was buying it for his son. Well, it turns out that was, at the time, Arkansas Majority Leader. I can't think of his name now. Anyway, he was telling, we were talking about, I said, tell me about Act 746, and he explained to me the whole detail, how it came about. Westerman, Bruce Westerman, that's who it was. Mm-hmm. So I got it directly from the horse's mouth, and then I ended up finding the Patriots group and the old Arkansas Carry group, and that's how I got involved.
Great. That's fantastic. And obviously, I mean, it's been beneficial, you know, because it's good to know what your rights are, you know. And of course now we have a situation where some in positions of power are saying, well, check with your local prosecutor before you carry a weapon. And it's like, okay, well, the law says what the law says. So it's really frustrating right now. I wish we had our leaders, you know, kind of just being more clear and just telling people what the law is. I mean, regardless of whether or not it's a big change or not from the status quo.
Well, unfortunately, we're still butting heads with that. We still have new people showing up on the group almost daily. And we had somebody yesterday ask, hey, has anybody called the ASP recently and asked them what they're going to do if somebody is caught open carrying and they have a concealed carry permit? And again, they were told if you're open carrying and have a permit, they're going to take your permit away. And we just shake our head and say, how could they possibly still be saying that? Again, this is not everybody that feels that way, but why a citizen should be able to call a state agency and get the correct information. But apparently they can't. They were even told they won't even follow Act 486. I mean, how could you sit and tell somebody that you're basically going to ignore a bill passed by the House?
So they said that. Hang on, this is now a law, and this was passed last year. I believe it was State Representative John Payton's bill. And it is called now Act 486. So look this up, folks. Now, Felix, tell us what this did. And you're saying that the Arkansas State Police is now saying they're just going to ignore the law. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what this person was told on this telephone call.
Okay. All right. So what is 486?
Well, what happened, we all know what happened to Drew Tanner at the Walmart open carry incident.
Yes.
Okay, he was the one open carrying and now got a lawsuit against state police. Eventually, the powers that be decided to pass a law that says, look, just because you got a concealed carry permit, we're not going to violate your Second Amendment rights. And this act basically is stopping the state police, one, from removing somebody's concealed carry permit if you're open carrying. And two, it basically reaffirms Arkansans' Second Amendment rights. And it specifies in here, the Second Amendment in Arkansas, let's see, what is it? Article 5 of the Arkansas Code So they're basically reminding people and basically putting it in the code where it's readable that you have a right to carry any way you see fit in Arkansas.
I mean, and I thought it was one of the silver linings in a session that was mostly about big government. I mean, here was an example of John Payton doing a really good thing here and trying to put a check on the government's authority and the power. And, you know, this whole thing is frustrating because, I mean, we didn't even have a concealed carry license in the state of Arkansas till the 90s. So ask yourself how
Correct.
people were exercising their Second Amendment rights before that. How were they doing it? Were they just in blatant violation of the law? It's like, no, we have been psychologically conditioned to believe that we have to have this permission slip in the first place. And at this point, there's a benefit to having it if you want to go across state lines or something. But respond to that, Felix.
That's exactly right. And I just in dealing with people that live here, it seems that people in the outer regions of Arkansas have had it better than the people of the inner city, per se. So somebody in Little Rock before was not going to be able to walk around with a gun, whereas somebody in western Arkansas, southern Arkansas, northern may have been able to get away with it because it's more country boys. They more understand the Second Amendment than the big city life.
Yeah. And so you think you think that was the motivation behind, well, we need a way to regulate who can have a gun in a bigger city like Little Rock? Was that why they decided to do this?
Well, I think that was part of the reason, but I've also heard it was also money driven. They're drawing a lot more money by the concealed carry by issuing the concealed carry permits as opposed to not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's about money now.
You got to understand too. A lot of gun people, even amongst ourselves, there are gun people who consider themselves pro two-way, but they still demand, they still like having that permit because it shows at least you've been checked out. Because we just can't trust everybody with a gun. There's even gun people that still feel this way. So it's not like this is just liberal versus conservative, anti-gun versus gun. There are gun people who prefer the concealed carry permit too.
Yeah, so I've really come to this realization. I guess maybe in the last year or so, when you think about the idea of self-defense as a human right. I mean, just like your freedom of speech or your right to assemble or freedom of the press or your freedom of religion or freedom to be secure in your papers and your effects, you also have a right to defend yourself and your property, and it's a human right. And,
well, I'd say,
go ahead.
Is the Second Amendment or your right to bear arms, is that considered to be a civil right? And if it is, then anybody who is against carrying a firearm to defend themselves, are they not against civil rights?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think about the statistics. I mean, a lot of people, and this is nationwide, they bought into the concealed carry thing because it does make them feel secure. Like, okay, they don't realize that they're essentially saying, well, I have to pay a licensing fee for the government to sell me back my right. Okay, we all, this is, I feel like, a human need. We want the government to be good. We want this affirmation, it's in a little way it's just kind of like a laziness, and so we want to have this government validate us, and I'm approved to carry a weapon and carry a gun because they've given me this license back. And this is all over the country that this has happened, and this is the way most people think that the Second Amendment should be regulated today. But I know Act 746 or the Patriots of Act 746. Let's just look at what the state of Arkansas's law says, and it doesn't have even a penalty. I mean, we're waiting on an opinion from the Attorney General about, well, if you do get caught with a weapon concealed without a license, what's the penalty? Where is it in the statute?
Right, and it's taken her a while to answer that too.
Yes, it is. I know. We're still waiting. I think it's a great question. Again, that was a letter written to her by Senator Linda Collins Smith. She was the one that started this inquiry, and so I'm really excited to get an answer to that. So what do we do? Okay, I want to go back to Act 486, Felix. Did we lose Felix? I think. Felix, are you there? All right, well, we'll have to get Felix back on the line. Go ahead and looks like we lost Felix. I could hear myself for a second. Did you hear that? Anyway, I want to go here. He's calling back right now. I want to go back to this 486 because essentially what Felix said is that there was somebody who claims that somebody at the Arkansas State Police said that they were just going to ignore 486. So, Felix, we got you back on the line. And I appreciate. Sorry, we dropped your call, Felix. But so let's go back to 486. What do we do if it is in fact true that this person was told by the Arkansas State Police or somebody there that they're just going to ignore 486? I mean, what is our recourse at that point? How do we get them to start following the law?
Well, that's a tough question because a lot of us have some kind of self-defense insurance. And especially if they have some of the better ones where you're covered if you're just merely arrested, because people need to understand this. You can basically be arrested for carrying a gun. If that law enforcement officer decides to arrest you, you're going to be handcuffed
right.
or you're going to be cited, and now you're going to have to fight it in court. Now, eventually, they'll probably never charge you. However, you're going to have to spend the money to defend that. Now, there should be some recourse for you to fight false charges, but unfortunately in Arkansas, there's not, at least under certain circumstances. You saw that. I don't know if you saw that case. It just happened. The video that just came out for Walnut Ridge for that law enforcement there.
No, I didn't. What happened? What happened?
Of course, it did. Oh, it didn't involve. He wasn't an armed. He was somebody who worked for the railroad. The video just came out yesterday. I'm not sure exactly when the incident happened, but this officer was chastising this man, and you just have to watch the video. It'll literally make you mad. And the man has already filed a federal lawsuit now against the city and the police officer and everything. But like I say, there was no gun involved, but this guy was just out of control. I mean, this law enforcement officer was literally out of control.
It's sad.
But again, you have no recourse in Arkansas law to fight this. And it's like, why should you have to be arrested just for them to just drop the charges against you because they know that there was no reason for them to arrest you to begin with.
Yeah. So, and that's where it's like, okay, well, you don't want to assume worse motives. I mean, it could be that there's an officer that still doesn't know what the law is because the higher-ups have not told them. But then at some point, it's like, is this just harassment? And that's what gets frustrating. And this is why our politicians need to take action. And the governor needs to correctly define constitutional carry in what it is, because when there is a growing rift between law-abiding citizens and our law enforcement that we care about very much, and I'm talking about the Arkansas State Police and others, that's something that you don't want to let that just hang out there and simmer. You don't want there to be a divide. These are people that are protecting and serving us. And they're doing that because we as the people have decided to give them that power. And then we as the people have our representatives that change the laws accordingly, whether it's Act 746 or Act 486. And we expect them to, enforce the ones on the books, even if they disagree with it, even if it changes a little bit of the culture. That's part of working for the government. The people get to make changes in their government.
Well, I've tried to make it clear to a lot of people, the problems we've had after 746 was passed. We wouldn't be anywhere where we are today if it wasn't for people like us and our group and others who are basically pushing it and shoving it down their faces, because they would just basically ignore it.
Yes, they would.
So,
yeah.
Now, on one hand, we're activists. We're trying to be activists in a good way. We're not trying to make it a free-for-all with firearms, but at the same time, the law is the law, and it has to be enforced on people, like the difference between concealed carry and open carry. I'm not a big open carry proponent per se, but at the same time, what does it take to stop the average person from seeing a gun and going, oh, my God, he's got a gun? Mm-hmm. Well, the only way to do that is to get people used to seeing firearms on people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And open carry is one of the best ways to do that, because if it's covered up, well, nobody knows you got a gun. Now, you can argue what's the best way to carry, open carry, concealed carry. That's an individual decision.
Yeah.
But we have to get people used to seeing firearms and not jumping out of their skin just by the sight of one.
Yeah, and if we can't do that here in Arkansas, we really got problems. Let me. Have you been following this Pennsylvania arrest out of the Starbucks? Have you been following this at all, Felix?
Yes, I have a little bit, and that's one of the questions I brought up in the group. I said, now, here's the thing. We're always told if you carry into a business, and whether you're concealed carrying, open carrying, and the business decides that they don't like you with a gun in there, okay, they can ask you to leave. And then you really have no choice but to leave at that point, because then you're trespassing. Okay, so a lot of guys want to puff their chest out. Well, it's my right to carry. Well, it's also a private business. If they decide they don't want that firearm in there, then that's up to them. However, we have to leave, otherwise it's trespassing.
Correct.
Now, let's take this to what happened at the Starbucks. Here's these two black guys who were sitting in a Starbucks, and I've heard these black guys are actually realtors. They're not just bums, but I'm not 100% sure about that. They were waiting for a friend of theirs to show up.
Yeah, it does not look good.
To go to the bathroom.
Yeah, go ahead. It doesn't look good. I've seen the video. It is interesting, but I was kind of like you. I was like, well, why not just leave? I mean, if you're being asked to leave, why not leave?
Right. Well, the problem here is I don't know why they did. So this was a good case of these customers are being trespassed. So legally, now again, I'm not unsure about Pennsylvania law and Arkansas law, but once you're trespassed, you have to leave. So technically, the cops were doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. They came and arrested these guys because they were told to leave and they didn't leave. Okay, fair shot. Now, what would happen if one of us was going in a facility carrying a gun and we were asked to leave and we decided not to leave? Now, these people in Starbucks is being chastised very severely for asking these people to leave because they were black. And they weren't hurting anybody. Okay, let's turn that around. If you're somebody carrying a firearm and you're asked to leave with the same business, it doesn't have to be Starbucks. It can be any business.
Yeah.
Would the same business be chastised for asking somebody to leave?
No, not like this. They'd be celebrated. They'd be like, way to go, way to promote gun-free zones that to keep us safe. That's a really good contrast, actually. I hadn't thought about that, Felix. It's really good.
Yep, that's my point.
Yeah, and I would just say, a lot of gun owners would leave, and especially there's so many gun owners that respect that sign if they see it. They say, well, I'm not going to go in there. I mean, it technically is the gun owner or the private business owner can set their own firearm policy on their own property. Now, I know a lot of firearm owners that will not even go to the businesses because they don't want to give up their right to protect themselves there, and so they're just not going to spend their money there. But this is about freedom of choice here, and honestly, with the whole Starbucks thing, Felix, I mean, I've been in Starbucks, and they don't let you go to the bathroom, and they've got a sign up that I believe even says that, like paying, if you want to use the bathroom, you got to buy something. It's just their policy. And yet, now they're it is crazy. We really don't know what the consequences are going to be of having such a hypersensitive society at this point. And it is just fascinating watching this and ridiculous at the same time. Felix Normand from Patriots of X746, I appreciate it. I'm being waved on. I got to go. So
thank you.
All right.
See you later.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Folks, go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of X746, and ask to become a member of this very, very giant and influential group here in Arkansas on the Second Amendment. Back in a moment.